Welcome to PodCache, the portable professional development podcast from CACHE Alumni. CACHE Alumni is the fastest growing association of professionals in care, health and education, and we're happy to have you here. This is where you'll hear from specialists and experts from across our network. Here's what's coming up.
There's near to 2,000 videos on the platform. So there was the period of obviously creating all those videos and making it. And so we've been in schools for the last 18 months or so. And when we speak to schools and show them, they absolutely can see what we're trying to achieve and how it would be effective in their school.
Let's jump in to this week's episode.
Thank you for having me on this podcast. Really excited about this conversation we're about to have. I'm Bethan Harding and I've got a background in education, always worked in education, still working in education and always will. A very quick summary. I started as a teacher in Swindon and quickly became the maths lead there and a lead maths teacher for the county. Then moved to America for a year and worked in a school in America just for experience and opportunity to travel and see education in another country. And then returned to Cardiff, which is my hometown, and worked in a large inner city school there, very high disadvantage, but it was a very well-known school, very forward-thinking. So I became the maths lead there, then the English lead, safeguarding lead, assistant head, etc., and then became a head teacher of that school, Herb Thompson Primary School in Cardiff. And we had a very successful inspection there, and so became kind of the Welsh version of a teaching school, if you like. And we wrote and delivered a lot of CPD for teachers and head teachers across the region. Most days we had people visiting our school, watching lessons, being trained and so on. So that was a really exciting opportunity. And I then became a strategic lead for the Central South Consortium. And we set up a lot of teaching hubs, improvement hubs, they were called, across the region. And we were a pioneer school and so on. So had great opportunities there to work with other leaders. And then in 2016, I got married to somebody from the northeast of England. So I moved to the northeast of England and became head of an all-through school, which is 3 to 19 school in Blyth in Northumberland. And then 2 years ago, I finished, not 2 years ago, probably about 18 months ago now, I finished being a head teacher and joined my husband. And we set up Harding Education. Harding Education does two things. It provides leadership training and coaching and support for school leaders and head teachers. But it also, we provide a number curriculum and learning platform called Winning with Numbers. And that is a primary maths curriculum for the number part of the curriculum and a learning platform, which includes a whole suite of resources for schools and parents and children to ensure that children are fluent and confident with number, ideally by the age of 10. So that's kind of what our mission is through Winning with Numbers.
Wow. Well, I've got loads of questions because there were loads of really interesting things that you've said in there. The first thing I wanted to ask, because I didn't know this already, was 3 to 19. What's that like? 3 to 19? Like that sounds like a massive age range. How do you look after the needs of and cater to such a massive age range?
I skipped over that part because I was aware of time. But yeah, it was a great professional opportunity for me as well, being ahead of a primary school, then moving to a school which was all through. I was a co-principal with somebody who was responsible for secondary and I was responsible for primary. But we very much worked together. We led the school as one, if you like. And we held lots of national conferences because, like you said, how does that work? There's a range of all through schools across the country. And the feedback we got through running these conferences was that actually the primary school and the secondary school very much worked in isolation in reality. And so we were very much wanted to explore how you make a 3 to 19 school most effective. What leadership structure should it have? Should the staff be working together and so on? So it was a really great experience for me and for all the staff to work in a school for 3 to 19, because often primary schools say that secondary schools don't pick up the children from where they're at and the children take a dip in year 7, which is very common. And secondary schools might say about primary, that we're not preparing them for that secondary curriculum. So having the opportunity to bring those staff together to make sure that the curriculum, the teaching, the transition was as seamless as possible was great. Because it is well known that children do take a dip in year 7. And what we're all about in Winning with Numbers is that seamless curriculum, so there isn't a dip, and that children feel that they're being taught by the same teacher, if you like, that the teachers know the children's background knowledge and start from that point. Whereas often in year 7, it's the difficulty that the teachers don't know the children's background knowledge, and therefore are just starting from where the curriculum tells them to start in year 7. So it was great to have those opportunities in CPD and more informally as well, to get those teachers together to make sure that, number one, the curriculum is sequenced and that the teachers know that curriculum and also know the children. And so there's less negative effect during those transition periods.
So tell us a little bit more about Winning with Numbers. How does that work? What is it?
Obviously, being a head teacher, and my husband who started the company has also got a head teacher background, and he's a maths specialist and was an Ofsted inspector, isn't anymore. So we've got a lot of background in education, and there's a real frustration, particularly in math. And it was very evident after COVID that children aren't confident in the basic number. And therefore, that's when we get the negative mindset when it comes to maths, because children are put into difficult problem solving situations or given challenges, and they haven't got that foundation and they haven't got that basic number knowledge. So then they get anxious or worried, or, because they can't answer the problem, or they don't know how to apply their knowledge to the challenge because they haven't got it. So we have a real vision really to ensure that all children are fluent and confident with number, and they're then able to apply that into the wider maths curriculum. And so we want them fluent, and then the confidence comes from that, because we've all heard a lot about the negative mindset in math. Even the government are talking about it. And so that's where we're at really. And it's a bit like phonics for maths. So anyone knows primary education, they know about the importance of phonics, getting the children to understand and know the letter sounds in order to be able to apply that knowledge to the wider reading curriculum. It's the same with Winning with Numbers in maths. So we say Winning with Numbers is like phonics for maths, getting that solid foundation in order for it to apply. So how we do that, we've written a curriculum which has got 300 wins, is what we call, but they're basically learning objectives. And those learning objectives, those wins, are being put in a straight line curriculum. So it's easy for teachers and parents to follow that curriculum and deliver it to the children. Often our maths curriculums, we have strands and teachers have to jump from one strand to the other. So we wanted to simplify that and put it in a straight line. So we've got 300 wins, 300 objectives in a straight line. And that curriculum took about 6 to 8 months to actually write and put together. Again, schools haven't got the time or maybe the expertise in order to do that. So we've put that curriculum together. And then that curriculum is put onto a learning platform. And our learning platform, people often say, what's unique about your platform? Well, again, having a school background, we've ensured that there's a suite of resources on there for teachers, for parents, and for children. So each of the 300 wins has a CPD video that is very short, and it basically tells the member of staff, this is what you're teaching, this is why you're teaching it, and this is how to teach it. Because there's lots of primary teachers who aren't confident in math. They might have not had a good experience themselves in maths, totally understandable. And so rather than having one big inset day at the beginning of the year, we give a drip feed of CPD throughout the year. So for every lesson, the teachers, the teaching assistants have got a CPD video that kind of trains them at ongoing. And it's called Be the Expert videos, because we want our staff to become more and more expert in teaching and maths, because we know they might not have had the knowledge or the experience themselves. And then for each of the 300 wins, there's a Teach Me video and there's goal videos. And those Teach Me videos and goal videos teach the children, basically, that win. And the goal videos model to the children how to answer those questions. And so the teachers can use that in class and the parents can use that at home. So worst case scenario, if you haven't got an adult there at all, the children can just press play and it'll teach them that win and it'll model to them how to answer the questions. But ideally, you've got a member of staff or a parent sitting with the child and using that video, kind of team teaching, if you like, with that video, pressing pause and having conversations around it and whatnot. And then on the platform, the children can answer questions after watching the gold videos and having it modeled to them. They can answer questions either on their whiteboards if schools haven't got devices, or they can answer questions straight into a device. So they can, some schools use it on just the main class board and then ask children to answer the questions at home on their devices. And some schools who've got devices, obviously the children answer their questions there and then. And then if they do that on a device, all the answers go into the system and the system gives you a lot of data analysis about how the children are performing and what speed they're working through for the win. Are they at the expected standard? How many wins have they got to catch up and so on? But the key thing about winning with numbers is all the way through, there's a remind me feature. So if the children or the teachers think, oh, the children aren't quite getting this, or if the children are at home and they don't quite understand, they can click the remind me feature. And the system will pick up what the children are not quite getting and take the member of staff or the parent back to the win that they need to revisit.
When I play Duolingo to teach myself German, like it knows the words that maybe I'm the weakest at and tries to build them into more sentences when I need this lesson.
So it'll pick up on the knowledge you've not got and it'll take you back to that win and say, don't worry, it's fine. Again, we don't want to cause any stress around the fact that you're not quite getting it. Let's just remind you you're not done anything wrong. Let's just remind you the previous knowledge that you've forgotten. So it takes them back to that win. And again, the children can work through the resources, the videos for that current win. So again, the parents can watch the Be the Expert videos and the parents can watch the Teach Me videos. So we're upskilling teachers. We're supporting parents who might get worried about in their child with maths because of their background knowledge. And we're also obviously teaching the children through the system and supporting them when those gaps have been identified.
This is Podcash, brought to you by CACHE Alumni. For discounts on everything from Apple products to MOTs, visit the cashback page of cachealumni.org.uk. That's cachealumni.org.uk.
Bethan, you're like my dream guest because I keep thinking about interesting things to ask you and then you just answer them like during the answer to the previous question. And it sounds like that it encompasses that idea of helping teachers and parents to also become fluent and confident if they're not. One of the more recent podcast episodes that we shared with Dr. Helen Williams about playful mathematics, we talked a lot about like the thing that you talked about at the beginning about someone having maybe a bad experience with maths. I can pinpoint my bad experience with maths. I know the moment that I forgot 7 times 7 over and over and over and over again and felt like I was never going to get it. And that was me done with maths forever when I was in primary school. But we talked about that in that episode. So the idea that I suppose you're building that confidence in every area of that child's sort of learning environment, I think is really nice. You've talked about it fitting with the curriculum and how it sort of maps that progress and does stuff. The bit about it being phonics for maths. How does working with numbers fit with the primary maths curriculum?
It's taken the whole of the number part of the primary maths curriculum. So the rest of the maths curriculum, winning with numbers doesn't address. It is just the number part. So it lifted the number part out of the maths curriculum. And if you follow winning with numbers, you are absolutely covering your curriculum, their maths curriculum as it stands, and introduce winning with numbers as an addition. So it's just an extra injection, if you like, of number. So they know when they come to that part of number or a part of the wider maths curriculum where they'll need that knowledge, the children will be confident because they've already come across this in winning with numbers.
That makes sense. And I think talking to Helen Williams, like obviously she was saying that like number is the bit that people aren't confident with. So schools might already be doing things like doing more shape stuff because if you use the word maths and people start to associate that with shapes or with volume, with like that sort of fun experimenting type stuff that you do in maths, then it's easier to then introduce the maths with numbers bit because they're already confident. So if actually they can also build that numbers confidence at the same time and start to associate that all as maths.
No, I would completely agree with Helen saying that. And that's why, many have taken this as an addition, as an extra injection, just like you have phonics as an addition and it sits in isolation for 20 minutes a day as part of your day. Again, because and that's what the difficulty is with a curriculum where you've got different strands of maths. Like you say, some teachers might lean towards spending longer in this strand because it's, more fun or they're more confident with it. So having winning with numbers where you are just focusing on the number parts and you're moving from one win to the next ensures that part of the really important part of the curriculum is being covered thoroughly.
That's great. And what did you've been everywhere. What was it like going across to America, and like the difference between the education systems in all three of those places is quite stark, I would imagine.
So I started in Swindon just because that was kind of the first job that came out when you came to uni. So you applied straight away for the first job and all of a sudden you moved into Swindon. And then America, I had a desire to kind of work elsewhere. And I could see that in Swindon, when I became maths lead for the region, and I was really enjoying that role, but I thought, and I wanted to progress with it, which is why I stepped out at that point thinking, let's do the working elsewhere now. So then I could kind of return and really, really get my teeth into the career. But so, and then coming back to Wales after America. So the biggest difference in America was that it was an 11 form entry primary school, which I'm not sure if they exist in England, but we're generally 2 form, 3 form is a big school. So working in an 11 form primary school was different. And I was working in kindergarten, which again, the kindergarten approach is very different. But it was a fantastic experience, and I became multicultural lead, and it was a big school, and so community events there was a lot of money invested in them, so it was a great opportunity to be multicultural lead and organise these different events, and really great budget in order to do that. So it was a great experience to do that, and then obviously to move to Wales and then back to England. So the English and the Welsh curriculum, the big difference that people would talk about at the moment, I guess, would be the Ofsted versus Estyn. Estyn is the Ofsted of Wales. And the topic at the moment is how the Wales have taken the judgment out of the inspection and just kind of given schools recommendations without that label that obviously a lot of people in England are fighting for. So I'm just using that because that's one thing that's really kind of being discussed at the moment. But to me, children are children wherever you go. And that's what's interesting about maths as well. We've made sure that with our curriculum, we've looked at the American curriculum, the Australian curriculum, et cetera, et cetera. Maths is maths wherever you go. That's why the straight line is very important with maths. Whereas the history curriculum or the geography curriculum or the English curriculum might change depending on which country you go to. But children are children wherever you are. And when it comes to maths, the maths curriculum, can be pretty consistent from country to country.
Can I ask how that had informed the sort of stuff that you'd done with maths and what you'd brought into that? You see, the maths is maths wherever you go, but I think one of the tensions that I think me and you might have talked about in one of our off-air conversations before now with maths is the way I do maths is different to the way my mum does maths. The way my niece does maths is different to how I do maths. So how...
You're absolutely right. People use different methods, which is what makes it difficult. So that was a key. We knew that, which is why we included the Be the Expert videos for parents in Winning with Numbers, because that is the frustration at home. A child says, I've got this homework. Parent tries to support, teaches them in the wrong way because what they learned at school is very different method to what their child is learning in school. So completely understands, which is why we put those Be the Experts in to say to parents, right, this is what they're learning and this is how to teach them. This is the method we're using. So parents can feel relieved to say, right, I can support my child now because I know how they're learning it and we won't kind of have a clash of discussions. So, and with that as well, for the first 100, we're also saying to parents, because the children are obviously very young at that point, they might not be writing, they might be just saying their numbers 1 to 3, for example. That's the first win. So in those videos, we say to parents, this is what they're learning. Here's some ideas. Maybe get some pasta out of the cupboard and lay the pasta out and ask the children to, count them or what have you. So we're saying to the parents, start with the learning platform, watch the videos, but then here's some ideas of what you can do in play with your child, help kind of reinforce this number knowledge. So yeah, I completely understand. And that's why, like I say, we've included that to try and get rid of that frustration of all these different methods that people have learned how to do math.
I like that idea of like tangible examples as well, like ways to build it into play. Cause I think like, obviously again, like thinking about maths being boring and scary, like actually, it's not. We use maths all the time. Like even the chickens that I've got in the garden do maths. They look at the 2 piles of stuff and they decide which one's bigger and which one they're therefore going to head towards. Like it's something that we do quite naturally if we're left to do it without it becoming scary. So
yeah, it doesn't have to be sit down and do this work for half an hour. Like you say, just whilst you're cooking, whilst you're watching TV or whatever, you can add in these relevant questions that don't feel like the child's doing some work, if you like.
Yeah, that sounds great. And is that similar with the teachers, with the staff members who are accessing the platform? So for those who might not be very confident with teaching maths, is that same sort of thought there for them actually?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we say start with the platform, watch the video, and they're all very short, particularly with the young, 2-3 minute, and then take that learning into your areas in your classroom, and here's some ideas. And that's where we've not said directly what teachers have to do, because people's environments vary. So just some ideas to kind of spark a little bit of the teacher's creativity, or, to inspire them on the kind of things that they could do, because their resources would vary school to school.
This sounds like a really great solution. Like, how are you finding it getting into schools? Like how easy is it to sort of give schools an answer to the problems that they've got with a maths curriculum?
Yeah, so we've only been, because there's near to 2,000 videos on the platform. So there was the period of obviously creating all those videos and making it. And so we've been in schools for the last 18 months or so. And when we speak to schools and show them, they absolutely can see what we're trying to achieve and how it would be effective in their school. So we don't really get any negative feedback. It might be, oh, we can't use this right now because we've just started a new phonics scheme, for example, and hitting staff with 2 new programs is too much. So they might say, right, let's delay that until September, which is absolutely right, because the implementation of any kind of new program you use has got to be done effectively. And we work very closely with our schools to ensure that the implementation is done effectively. Again, because of being head teachers, we know what it's like. So we are our customers, if you like. And so we understand the issues in schools and the difficulties in schools. And so we very much, as part of our program, put quite intense support in. We want to see ourselves as part of the team. So we make sure, we provide launch training to introduce winning with numbers to all the staff. And then we very much suggest going in, on a termly basis, working maybe with the maths lead or with teachers to look at where you're at as a school and the implementation and how we can support. And we're always on the end of a phone for, a Teams meeting with the maths lead or the head teacher, or, can you support us with this? Can you give us advice on this? Because we aren't just we don't like the word product. We aren't just a product that we just give to schools and we say goodbye. As soon as schools start winning with numbers, we see ourselves as part of their team, and we want to work with them to make sure that it's implemented as well as possible in their context, because each context is different. Some might use it just for an intervention for some children who need to kind of catch up. Most schools use it whole school. Some secondary schools have started to use it again for those children who need additional support. So we want to be part of that conversation to make sure that the implementation is smooth. And schools, work extremely, well with us. And, it's great to see that they've recognized that this part of the curriculum needs work. And I think the government are getting there with it as well. In fact, the Labour government very much put out phonics for maths, which is another kind of strap line. They've seen it for reading. They've said that here are the programs that you should be using in order to get phonics and where it needs to be. And they're starting to get there with number as well. So, schools do see that it's a problem, and schools see that winning with numbers can address that quite well.
That sounds great. Tell us more about secondary schools using winning with numbers, because I hadn't thought about how this program could actually support anyone who needs support with numbers and maths and confidence with.
Yeah. So what's great about it, obviously when you're teaching a whole class, you're teaching one win, but you might have children who should be on a lower win or a higher win. And so what's great about winning with numbers is that individual children can be on different wins if the setup allowed that. So at secondary school, it particularly does. So if we have not met the expected standard at primary, so what do secondary schools do with them? The key thing we would say is get them fluent and confident with number. And so often they may be sent out with a learning support assistant to do some catch-up programs, but the learning support assistant or the teacher doesn't know the primary curriculum. So they might not be hitting the right part of the child's learning journey. So with winning with numbers, a learning support assistant could take the group of children out, and each of the individual children could be on a different win. And they simply, on an iPad or some device, press play. It'll teach them. And so the learning support assistant in secondary is just there to facilitate that group. But they're able to simply press play. The child is taught, press play on the goal video as the child is modeled how to answer the questions. Then that child can answer the questions. If they get stuck, they got the remind me feature to take them back. So the secondary schools very much use them like that, where the learning support assistant is just a facilitator, but they know they're getting high quality math teaching at the exact point where the child's at, rather than the teacher assistant being given something by the class teacher who might not be aware of exactly where the child's at and the primary curriculum and how to deliver that. So really, it's kind of, someone said it's like a gift to secondary schools because it's there on a plate. And again, you might have learning support assistants who've not had a good experience with maths, not confident themselves. They can watch, even if it's 2 minutes before the lesson, the expert video that'll help explain to them what's going to be covered and how it's going to be taught and so on.
This is Podcash, brought to you by CACHE Alumni. For job search and careers advice in care, health and education, why not try our state-of-the-art Skills Miner AI tool? Skills Miner is under the Careers tab of cachealumni.org.uk. That's cachealumni.org.uk.
I used to work in welfare to work and in homelessness. And a lot of the people that I would support or that would come into contact with would struggle with numeracy. Can you see winning with numbers supporting those adult groups with numeracy skills?
Yeah, absolutely. So the government, don't know if listeners know, but they've invested a lot of money in what they call the Multiply Project. And the Multiply Project, the purpose of that is to get the adults you're talking about fluent and confident with number, if you like. And so there's lots of organizations who are running various programs to support adults with numeracy, exactly what you've described there. So we actually work with, at the moment, 2 or 3 organizations. They're actually football clubs who kind of run these adult programs, and they now work with us. So they use Winning with Numbers as part of their program. So they might run some sessions on cooking on a budget, if you like, to help those adults with numeracy on that side. But they also use Winning with Numbers, and those adults work through the Winning with Numbers program with their child. So it is teaching them the maths that their child's learning and promoting a more positive kind of relationship between the adults and the child when it comes to supporting with homework. But also it's helping the parent with their own numeracy too. So the last 100 wins particularly, a lot of us would have to kind of remind ourselves how to multiply with decimal place numbers and things like that. So those last 100 wins particularly, those adults, either with their child, are working through the Winning with Numbers program, or they're able to use the program themselves individually. Some of them might not like to within the group, but they've got access. If they buy Winning with Numbers, they've got access both in school, in the groups, and at home. So those adults might access that at home on their own, working through the program themselves. So yeah, because we tried to strip away a lot of the gamification for cognitive load theory reasons, but also to ensure that it wasn't childlike, if you like, for secondary schools. And so adults who are using it don't find it particularly childish, because there's the gamification, kind of like I say, we've stripped it back as much as possible to make people focus on the learning and the teaching that's going on in the videos. So yeah, we are working with some young adult groups in order to improve their numeracy. And, we found that we hadn't thought about that ourselves, but it's been really effective. And so, we very much would welcome opportunity to work with kind of young adult groups, particularly if they've got children who can also work through the program as well.
Yeah, I suppose as an adult who obviously is good at maths, having been maths lead from a young age and marrying another maths head teacher, how do you get into the mindset of someone who's not good at maths?
Well, interestingly, I did maths A level, but we're not what you would imagine as in grade A students to degree level, or first degree at all, particularly then. So obviously we got through school, we did okay with math, but I think it's because I'm waffling now here, but I had an A-level teacher. Hopefully he's not listening. He was a lovely man, but he was so, so, so intelligent in math. He could not communicate it because it was all in his brain and he couldn't communicate it to us. Like I say, a lovely man, but just couldn't teach it because he didn't understand people who didn't understand it.
Had a similar experience with a maths teacher.
Threw it on the board and we were all lost within seconds. So that's not us. So very much that's why I think Ben is really invested in math, particularly because he's able to teach it, understanding that it needs to be broken down into very, very small steps. So our Winning with Numbers curriculum, you've got the national curriculum here. The Winning with Numbers curriculum is broken into very, very small steps. And the goals within each win is broken down even further. And if you see the videos, you will see that because it's based on a real understanding that gaps are caused because we move through the curriculum too quickly. And so most people need it broken down into really small steps in order to understand it and able to grasp. So actually, yeah, we're not PhD students in maths and we understand that a curriculum needs to be broken down into the smallest of steps because we understand, frankly, the majority of people learn like that. And that's why we got such great percentage of students going to secondary school without that basic knowledge because we're moving through the curriculum too quickly, being a bit like that A-level teacher I talked about there. So Winning with Numbers is not being built by somebody with that mindset at all. So
that makes loads of sense. The best maths teacher I ever had was a gentleman who actually failed his maths GCSE twice. And then he joined the army and the army taught him maths. And because they'd taught it to people who didn't understand maths and hate maths that way, when he left the army, he decided to get his PGCE and become a maths teacher. I think what I learned about maths at that time was that I needed maths to be tangible. I needed it to be something that I could imagine or that was real so that numbers became like something that you could picture rather than just obtuse things that exist.
Yeah, absolutely. But as well, these days, moving, with how fast tech is moving, to have a whole curriculum and all the tangible things you need in order to move that curriculum is really difficult, which is why again, putting winning with numbers onto a platform allows it all to be there and all to be accessible by schools and homes. And then the tangible part, the human beings, in the child's life can build that in. But having it all there in one place with all the teaching and the resources and the support, I think is important these days, particularly, and with things like homeschooling and there's a whole world of homeschooling out there. Again, we don't want people just plucking at different activities in math. There's a risk of that too, especially with, like we say, with the tangible, we'll do a bit of this today, do a bit of that. The subject knowledge, and that straight line curriculum is so important to avoid the children getting gaps.
Yeah, and you've touched on something else there that's really interesting that I hadn't thought about, and that's that connection. There is a lot of homeschooling, and there's also a lot of children who are not going to school, but also who may have like infrequent or sort of spotty contact with school, and actually people can maintain some sort of access to bits and bobs that they can follow through, but also keep track of where they're at with it through something that is a straight line. Yeah. It sounds like it might be something that could support those people who maybe aren't accessing school every day.
Yeah, for sure. If you have got children in your school, giving them access to Winning with Numbers means that they've got the full number curriculum at home. And like I say, worst case, if there wasn't an adult there who was able to support them, they can just press play. Most children are pretty tech savvy, if you like, compared to adults. When it plays on their mobile phone, they can do the questions on a mobile phone as well. So that's what people say. If people haven't got devices, looking at children who are more disadvantaged, we find that giving them an A4 sheet to do at home, if they're not at school, compared to doing something on their mum's mobile, even the most disadvantaged, the huge majority of people have got a mobile phone. They're much more likely to do something on a mobile phone than on a sheet that might get lost or what have you. And again, the teacher or the parent is able to access the answers to the questions in real time, and it'll kind of analyze how the children are doing, what they're not getting right, when they need to move back to and so on. So a much more effective way for those children who are kind of in school part-time or not at all. If they've got access to Winning with Numbers, you can track if they're doing it as well on a daily, or how often they're doing it and so on. So it'll be, a really good resource for that, because again, it's often the school's responsibility, that child, even though they're not coming in. So how can we meet our responsibility and ensure they're getting some kind of curriculum? And again, because the videos are on there, they're getting quality teaching, if they are accessing it. And that's just obviously something the school would have to monitor.
That's great. And do you think you'll ever offer Winning with Numbers to individuals?
Yeah, we do. There's a school subscription, there's a tutor subscription, and there's a individual parent subscription. So if schools subscribe, all the parents and children get access at home. Parents don't need to do anything. But if you're part of a school that doesn't subscribe to Winning with Numbers, as a parent, you can subscribe one child at 10 children if you've got that. So yeah, individual parents can subscribe to the Winning with Numbers and have access kind of all year round. And then the same for tutors, because again, there's lots of tutors who could move through the Winning with Numbers through program with their tutees, and again, the parents would be able to access it as well. So yeah, it is offered to individuals too.
Oh, that's really exciting. Maybe that's one of the things me or my colleagues might explore with our development allowance, so that we can get better at maths.
Yeah.
We've talked about loads of interesting things. Is there anything that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet that you'd like our audience to know?
I think it's important to make the point that there's a lot of negative press around teaching and a lot of negative press around math too, but about the profession. And I think at every point in my life, working for a very disadvantaged school in Wales, particularly, and then moving into this Winning with Numbers, it is about improving life chances. Now, all schools will say that as part of their vision or on their slogan. But, my personal mission in life, if you like, is to improve life chances. And I think there's been a lot of investment put into reading, because we know that improves life chances. But we also know numeracy improves life chances, and there's been less investment in that, which is exactly why we're doing Winning with Numbers, if you like, and we started it because we very much are about improving life chances, and we know literacy and numeracy will do exactly that. So let's focus on numeracy because there's been less work done in that area. So, that's my person, and I don't want to lose that. And, if everybody listening is in education, it's slightly off, but let's not lose the kind of why and the purpose. It's challenging. It's difficult. There's a lot of negative press, but let's not lose the purpose and the why. And for me, it's about improving life chances. And so I'm not going to be negative about that, and I'm going to be positive about that. And I would just encourage everybody, wherever they're at in their own personal math journey and whether they're at in education, is to kind of not lose your why and not lose your purpose and maintain a positive mindset towards math, but education as a whole, because I think that is kind of slowly deteriorating and we don't want that, So yeah, that's kind of the last little nugget, I might say.
And that's a really nice note to end on. Where can people find Winning with Numbers and Harding Education if they want to find you?
Yeah, so Winning with Numbers we've got a website and that'll give you all the information you need. And that's www.numbers.com. So not www, but www.numbers.com, Winning with Numbers. And that website will give you all the information you need. And there's a link on there if you wanted a demo or if you wanted an informal conversation with us about anything we've talked about. You can kind of book a slot directly into our diary. So, please do that. So yeah, that's probably the best place to find us. And then Harding Education, where we provide a lot of leadership training and support, is hardingeducation.com. But we've talked mainly about Winning with Numbers, but you can also find us there at hardingeducation.com. And we are on Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram, and it was kind of early stages there. So please do us up on any social follower.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, please follow or subscribe on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. You can also watch many of these conversations by heading over to cachealumni.org.uk and going to the CPD and best practice section of the site. That's cachealumni.org.uk.